as we are approaching the final panel that we have with us today. And I've actually given these poor speakers the task of, can we bring some hope into this last discussion? And it's, I must say, it's something to talk about this during a full segment like this. Can really touch upon something, especially when we talk about people. But the idea now is that we are going to talk about exploring new ideas and partnerships to tackle today's challenges, and maybe even find some best practices. What can we do together? And just as this forum is intended, we try to bring different forums, different actors into the same room, and now we even have you in the same panel. We have Kanika, our colleague from the Swedish Red Cross. We have Simon from Ramboll. We have Cecilia from Swedbank. And we have Maria from SIDA, the Swedish Development Agency. And I will open up with quite a broad question for you, I think, Kanika, because I know that this is something that you think about a lot in your everyday work. And I think we've touched upon it during the first segment. But why should now the private sector and the humanitarian sector partner more? I know we have the public sector represented here as well. But if we start just in the humanitarian and private, why should we join forces, and what could that look like?
I mean, first of all, thank you all for being part of this conversation, and also, Josephine, thank you so much for facilitating. I think that, the easy answer there is that we have so much to gain if we do it, if we start to bring this together. And I think at the Swedish Red Cross, we've had the really fortunate opportunity for a little while now to start thinking about this when it comes to solid waste management. The reason we're looking at solid waste management is because, we've seen today about the climate crisis and how it's impacting so many different communities, but solid waste acts as a risk amplifier when it comes to these climate impacts. In the communities that we work with, so many of the drainage canals that help floodwaters to recede and get away from communities are jam-packed with waste, with particularly light plastic waste. And we as humanitarians are actually contributing so much to this, because what is humanitarian aid at its core? It's an exercise of distribution. We are giving out a lot of different things that have to be ready on a moment's notice, which means that they are individually, hygienically packed and ready to be distributed. So we're contributing the problem, but we have no solutions. Our solutions right now are to dig holes and bury this waste into the ground, which leaves these communities much worse off, or we burn it, or we leave it just there as it is. And we as the Swedish Red Cross decided we needed to take a closer look at this. And why, in part, is because we're here in Sweden, one of the world's leading countries when it comes to waste management. And so we are really interested to tap into these different kinds of technical expertise that are there and try to bring that knowledge in and bring it to the communities that need it most, in part because we as humanitarians need to be better and more efficient and do more to help these communities more quickly, but also because we've heard it many times today, and we feel it in the sector that we're working in, that the funding is changing and it's shrinking. From our private sector, from the public sector, this funding is becoming very different. So we need to find new avenues. And for us, we believe that maybe one avenue is to partner in a more strengthened way with the private sector. And we've had the opportunity to work, looking into new kinds of technologies with Ramboll and with Sjögren to see, what is out there on the market, what could be used. And in doing so, not only have we opened ourselves up to things, but we've also opened up Ramboll and Sjögren's eyes to a new type of area of work, but also to new considerations. For the first time, our colleagues at Ramboll have to think about what does a new technology in waste management mean for somebody living, in a community that might be collecting waste. It's a totally different concept of social impact that our poor consultants, we've had to expose them to and blow their minds up about it. So that's been really something interesting to explore, but also we offer so much expertise in the humanitarian sector when it comes to logistics and when it comes to working directly with people and communication. We do things that are so different than the private sector does, and so there's a lot of complementarity to have there. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think waste management is a very concrete example of greening our own response as well as looking at our actual impact. And I think this was also touched upon by Taha. I don't know if you noticed in the previous panel when she was talking about målkonflikter. I don't know how to say that in English, but when conflicting goals, thank you, when it comes to preparedness, for instance, in Sweden, and the climate impact of that preparedness. So Kanika has already mentioned you, Ramboll, Simon Ramboll, and also talked about how this has kind of opened your eyes and given you new reflections. But apart from that, what is in it for you in this type of collaboration?
Yeah, I must start with explaining what Ramboll is, I think, to answer that question. We are foundation-owned, started 1945 after the Second World War, founded as a foundation in Copenhagen, and with the intention to rebuild Europe in a sustainable way. So foundation-owned and very strong obligations with that foundation. And I think what we want to do is to contribute to a sustainable building of the society. And I think this is an excellent example of how we can do that. In general, I would say that we are a technical consultant. So we have 18,000 experts within technical areas across the globe. And we try to leverage from the knowledge that we are gaining across. And of course, applying that locally in the different areas where we are working. And this is an excellent example of taking the knowledge how to set waste management systems up, for instance, and across I would say, the different needs in the society. I mean, we also have water treatment or production or the energy, all these utilities and services that you actually need with that expertise and then understanding it in the context that we have together with the Red Cross here. That's a really interesting area for us. And also, I must say, we are, of course, as a foundation, we also have pro bono projects where we're also partnering up. So it's also an important thing that we have a deep cooperation, I would say, in many areas with the Red Cross. And of course, we are learning from these kind of projects that we are teaming up. So extremely interesting.
What I thought of when we talked prior to this conversation, you said that there's similarities here. You're saying you're 18,000 experts, you work globally, we're global, and that you are also looking at learning on a global level and bringing it back, for instance, to domestic contexts such as Sweden. Do you have any reflections after listening today on how, if any of this resonates for you as a company?
Yeah, there are several takeaways. It's been an extremely interesting day, I think. It goes both ways. I mean, that's my takeaway. It's a global context. We are getting more connected internationally. Talking about climate and, I mean, the challenges to cut carbon emissions, that's really a global challenge, needing global cooperation, policies, regulations to get that down. And also leveraging on the technology worldwide, I mean, to get that happening. So it's an area where we can build the technology and really apply it worldwide. But it's also getting the information in. I mean, to see how to learn from the areas which are more maybe threatened by immediately in a short term by the changes of the climate. We can also learn in terms of resilience and climate adaptation for the Swedish system, as mentioned before. I think we can look at the areas which are worse and then try to adapt and move early, I would say, on the Swedish system. And with that, of course, we can also import knowledge. I think we have to be humble in that way to see some technologies and expertise we can export out of the Swedish Nordic approach, but also the other way around. Yeah.
Similar to what Kanika was touching on as well. Swedbank, because I think Kanika was talking about both the technical expertise needed that we have and that we can also share, and you're also moving in that direction, Simon, when it comes to knowledge. And then there's the financial side to it. And I think Swedbank, you support the Red Cross in many ways, but and you're welcome
Yeah.
to mention those, but I think it's also interesting when we talked on how you work a lot with the issues that we just talked about on the municipal level in Sweden, for instance. But please, you were wanting to comment on.
Yeah, yes, to talk about new solutions and new knowledge, because we understand that our clients need more than financial advice and financial solutions. So we have a cooperation also with Ramboll, actually, and so that's quite new, and it's really good. It's to make real estate or energy companies more energy efficiency, and we also have strategic advice from you on maybe it could be business plans, for example, and then we connect it to financing, of course. So that is really important for our clients, because it's more and more complex, and we have more regulations also. So that is it's a concept that we launch and evaluate and also make it grow now.
In the previous panel, we talked about that there's quite a lot of costs associated with climate adaptation, and I know that Swedbank has a role. Do you want to mention, because I think it's just connecting back to the previous panel as well.
Yeah, and to the municipalities, because we work a lot with the public sector, and they have, of course, challenges both in climate transition but also adaptation. So we have a lot of discussions, of course. What are their needs, their roadmaps, and what kind of investments is important to make this happen. And we have mentioned Gävle before, 2021, and that was really, really hard. And they are working a lot now with adaptation. And we see that investors are really interested also to support, and insurance companies to invest locally in municipalities and their investments, because they see that, of course, they have had also a lot of problems here. So just in Gävle, I think it's 1.2 billion crowns has been costs for insurance companies. And now they want to have proactive work together with the municipalities. So that is something we see, and the municipalities, they issue bonds, and that is really attractive. Water bonds, it could be blue bonds or just sustainable bonds.
Mm-hmm. Do you see that, because what we're talking about here is working both when it comes to technical expertise and the financing. What is it that's stopping us from doing it this even more, would you say? And I see Kanika wanting to answer. But Cecilia, you go first. And then
actually nothing, but I think this is quite new for us, I think, to have these cross discussions. And of course that we learn from each other, and I think it's extremely important. But it is quite new. Cooperation between the finance, banking, and technical consultants, that is also quite new. So I think it's important because the issues are complex, so we need to cooperate.
Yeah. Kanika, do you want to comment? And then I'm going to let public sector here join the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the humanitarian point of view, we are quite reasonably a little bit cautious, I think. I mean, we are dealing with the most vulnerable sectors of society. And so it can be a little bit, I think, daunting for us to say, okay, please, public or profit-driven private sector, come in and help. You know, it feels a little bit, I think, maybe against some of our values, but I think we need to re-explore that. And also just understand that our economies, whether we like it or not, are profit-driven. And so we do have to make sure that we are making room, that it's not necessarily a bad thing if somebody is going to make money from this, as long as somebody is helped at the end of the day, because that is still what's happening. I think there's also, though, a bit of a shift that has to happen, and I think it's also maybe why perhaps private sector might be a little bit afraid of of humanitarians or NGOs often is that we don't. We're often coming, oh, please give us money. And I think we can change that and say, we don't necessarily need money, we need partnerships. We need your expertise. And we can have that in a more, I think, a more structural or a more, a more proactive conversation. It doesn't have to just be about the money.
I'll let you reflect on if we have any concrete examples. We've already talked about waste management, and maybe we can use that as a further example, just to explain to everyone listening what that has looked like. As we say that we are talking about best practices here, but what Kanika is saying at the end of the day is someone's making money off of it, if someone's helped. But I know when we talked about this, Maria, you said, well, the money still has to come from somewhere. What's your perspective on? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
yes,
what's your perspective?
Yes. Can I give a general perspective and then a concrete example?
Please do.
I thought I'd start with a concrete one, but I'll do the general one. So I think, as we've heard, the countries and the communities we work with, Sweden is way more advanced. So I get, envious to hear about what's happening in Sweden, considering what's not happening in Tanzania or Uganda or Myanmar or all those countries, Mozambique, who are affected much more immediately, directly from climate change and with far less institutional abilities to deal with that. Also, just note two things related to money. We are a development agency, so we are quite a bit about money. We are about other things as well, but money is important. The first one is, as we've heard, and just again to sort of underline that you get more bang for the bucks or less catastrophes, risks and so on if you invest it early in building resilience and development. I think we've heard so many examples today. The cost when the crisis is there, when the flooding, the cyclone and so on, it's far higher both for livelihoods and also for lives overall. So just to sort of underline that, so we need to invest in that much more upstream. Then looking at just specifically the climate finance, because that's the area I know, if we look at the financial flows, we've heard about that balance, of course, we have to address both, but it's so much more now in mitigation, minimizing, dealing with the greenhouse gas emissions, and we need very clearly to work with that. If you add the private flows, it tilts even further to that end. And why is that? Because there are more market opportunities. You can invest in green transport, you can invest in renewable energy solutions, solar, wind, and so on. So the private sector lends itself much more easily to mobilizing because there are private customers in another way. When you look at adaptation, even more I think when you look into humanitarian, I think we are seeing opportunities coming and more interest growing in that. But I think also by definition, particularly if you're talking about the pure humanitarian, that will, I think, largely remain public sector financed. Then the further along we move to either recovery part or the upstream sort of resilience development building part, the more private sector finance you can mobilize. I'm not saying it's impossible downstream, but I'm saying that it's more difficult. And I think it's important to be aware about that. I want to give you a few examples of what we are doing. We are working a lot, building partnerships, that's very much what we are about. Working with private sector, working with civil society, working with multilateral agencies, working with the Swedish agencies and so on, trying to promote, of course, that there is, for example, that we support a lot on disaster risk reduction, the big multilaterals working with that. We also support smaller networks like the global CSO network on disaster risk reduction to get them to have a voice and say in those global fora, which is really, really important to have the local perspective. And we also work supporting other types of partnerships through, Victor, are you here? Global Resilience Partnership at SRC. Also connecting people and the dots. When it comes to finance then, and more looking at specific of this sort of mobilizing finance from the private sector. We do that in different ways, and I'll start with an example, if I may, which is that we work a lot with guarantees. Guarantee is about minimizing risk. It's about, let's say, you can simplify it as an insurance for those who provide a loan. It's very simplified. You can, argue with me on that one. In the best of worlds, we can actually provide a guarantee. We have no cost from the Swedish taxpayers' money. It's just our own time. And those who get the guarantee, they pay like a risk premium for it, meant to buy that insurance. So one example we have is a guarantee in Uganda, which is combined to a local bank, Grameen Credit Agricole. So they provide in their turn financing, microfinance, to very small-scale entrepreneurs. And they also provide technical assistance, and they also help to provide training, education in market systems, business, and so on. Our guarantee is for 25 million Swedish kronor, and that mobilizes another 50 million Swedish kronor. And in that way, the outreach is much bigger. We can build on the local entrepreneurs and the local system and strengthen that, which builds resilience. And we can strengthen the local communities so that next time the shock comes, hopefully the effects are less. So this goes to 50% to refugee camps, and 50% goes to entrepreneurs in the host communities. And so far, I think it's about 120,000 individuals that have benefited from this and has strengthened resilience. I mean, just to give a bit of example, it's not directly climate finance, but I think it still shows what you can do, if we work together, if we use our different instruments and work with the different actors.
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
It looks like you want to comment, Cecilia. I think you brought through two things here, both like where in this stream where we see partnerships most likely, where you're saying that the pure humanitarian was, I think, your wording, might still be public sector, but then we move up the stream. If any of you want to comment on partnerships there, but then also please bring more examples, because I think that's also helpful when we get kind of concrete, like Maria was now.
Just a short comment. That is what we could call blended finance, and what was discussed at last COP, where we see private capital, maybe philanthropic capital, and governmental support. So we shall find this case, so to say, which could be possible to finance together, but it need also to be a tight discussion, and I think we need to find trust between the different parts here to have these deep dialogues to make financing together. I think it's very interesting, and it will grow. Yeah.
Do you want to add something?
Yes, I agree, definitely. And a blend is needed, and I think partnerships are very important. I mean, with the whole change of the society that we're going through, resilience is one part, and it's a lot about security of supply of various services and more robustness. And so many things are changing now due to sustainability ambitions in general. I mean, the whole green energy, the natural infrastructure fund, the water situation, if you're looking across Sweden. So I think also the amount of work that is to be done in the short term, and also some areas forming new value chains, new markets coming up in some areas also need strong partnership and bilateral dialogues, I mean, to form and create these new markets and areas. So I think definitely, I mean, before things are up and running and you have formed some markets, it's really important to team up with founding technical solutions and off-takers and wide understanding.
I think, and I will let Kanika address this soon, but as I have asked several others here, it's like, what does that mean, do you think, for humanitarian organizations such as the Red Cross? And I'm not just thinking the Swedish Red Cross, but more broadly. We're national societies working all the way down to the local level, but we're also a global federation of national societies. What does this mean for us? Where could we join discussions more? You're talking about partnerships as being key. I think we're moving in that direction, but what do you think that would mean for us? I know.
Yeah, I'm a little bit curious about your cooperation. So what could we learn from that? How could we make to grow the cooperation, to have these cross discussions? I think it's a good start.
Kanika, do you want to?
Maybe. Yeah, first I want to, just really underscore that, what Maria said, and also, the importance of the public sector financing, that we're able to dig into this question of solid waste management because we have funding from the European Commission from their humanitarian aid section. We also, but it's also relevant because the work that CETA funds us in generally in Cox's Bazar has allowed us to have the collaboration with Ramboll and Cox's Bazar, where they're bringing in their expertise. Cox's Bazar is in Bangladesh. It's one of the world's largest refugee settlements, more than 1 million people settled there. And we're running a number of water and sanitation projects there. So we're providing drinking water. One of the most recent collaborations we had with Ramboll was to look at, how to improve the efficiency of the water resources that we're providing there, the drinking water, also looking at the fecal sludge treatment plant there, and reviewing some of the environmental activities that we've done. But that's only possible because we have ongoing projects that are funded by CETA. But the other part of that is also that because Ramboll has experience in working with humanitarian aid, they won the procurement for when we looked for expertise to look at solid waste management. And that's what set them apart. Because most people, most companies, when we look at these questions, have no idea what it means when we talk about humanitarian aid. So I think that's also part of it, that we can, if we start to partner in, through support of the public sector, we eventually get to the point where we're able to bring in the private sector in a meaningful way for them, but also I think they've gained and we've gained. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I get so many thoughts from hearing. I mean, as I said, I think our role is very much sort of catalyze, mobilize, strengthen partnerships. And talking about the Red Cross, I can see that there is a tendency, particularly when we go to the larger instruments like guarantees, particularly when they are global. And the one I gave was quite local, so that was a very clear local dimension. But, for example, we are having a joint call for proposal related to climate adaptation, and we are doing that together with a number of Nordics and USAID. And of course, the risk there is that it's going to be very sort of high-level aggregate, very upstream, and with very little knowledge of what happens really downstream to the sort of, the constituencies, the communities, those really affected. So I think, that the Red Cross has, a very, very clear role being there in the sort of the space that you occupy at both the local level and at the global level, and try to infuse that or continue to infuse that wherever you have the chance, and sort of, enable that grounding, if you like, in the local realities. And I'm not sure if anybody mentioned that, but one of the initiatives we support is something called the Early Warning for All. It's an initiative by the Secretary General. So it's a UN-wide to strengthen the early warning systems. And it's two organizations, the UN Disaster Risk Reduction Organization together with the World Meteorological Organization are the sort of two main, but it's 4 pillars. One is on sort of local level of vulnerabilities, and that one is implemented or sort of coordinated, I would say, not implemented, but coordinated by the Red Cross. And I think that's a very good example of how you as an organization can sort of add into partnership.
Do you want to have any final comments on moving forward? Because I think we've had many examples, and I think it was really great how you talked of our global and local level, because that's something that we really try to build on. Cecilia?
I work daily with our clients, investors, insurance companies, it could be fund companies, but also public sector. And we see that investors are more and more interested to invest not in just green, because they want also to make an impact. So they go from green buildings to transition. And that is interesting because it don't need to be green. And you talked about bang for the buck. They are also thinking of how should we have maximal impact for 1 krona we invest. So that is also maybe energy transition that is more interesting for them than these already green buildings. And they also want to have storytelling, and that is something we talk about here. So if we see the needs and the interest from the investors and what they look for, because they have also clients and customers and prospects in Gävle or Västerås, where we have these climate adaptations. So how can we understand the investors? We see the needs from the public sector, and we are a bank in between, so we are working daily to find this, and also try to support this storytelling, because that is also important, both for the municipality, because they want people to move there and companies to come to Gävle or Västerås and what they do there, and also the insurance companies. So that is also bang for the buck, and that is financing and very important, I think.
I'm so glad that you're raising your hand, because that means that there is a conversation that we are going to continue. But the time for this conversation is unfortunately up. But that's the whole point of this forum, to start discussions that we can then build further on. And I think there are several points here that we can bring forward. And I think you really did open up the floor for that. There are actually examples of what we're doing together and things that we can do more together in bridging this gap, really, and getting bang for the buck by early action. So thank you so much. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.